Good afternoon. This is Bill Klingberg with SCORE. Welcome to our website, part two of building income through real estate. First, a couple of words about SCORE. We are a nationwide volunteer organization with 11,000 volunteers around the US. 150 of us in the Houston chapter, which is the largest chapter in the United States. We offer free mentoring. All you have to do is go to our website, houston.score.org, and there's three tabs at the top, one of which is Find a Mentor. The whole key to SCORE is to find someone that has been in the same industry and perhaps even owned the same kind of business that you want to start. Hopefully, whatever we did wrong, you will learn from and not do yourself. We have lawyers, accountants, manufacturing folks, sales and marketing people, different backgrounds from different industries to help you, especially in this time right now, trying to get back into business. So if you have questions of any specific kind, please go to our website and click on Find a Mentor and type in as much information as you can, and someone will get back to you via email and make an arrangement, obviously a virtual arrangement, to get with you. Now, not to take up any more of Nick's time, Nick Tarte is going to give you part two of building income through real estate. Thank you very much. It's yours, Nick.
Thank you, Bill. Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon. Like Bill said, my name is Nick Tarte, and this is the part two of our building income through rental real estate. We did part one about 2 weeks back, actually exactly 2 weeks back. And so here we are on part two. Just a few little things. I will be taking Q&A at the end, just because of the format of this webinar does not allow for an interactive environment, but I'm used to speaking in front of people and kind of understanding their reaction and being able to interact. So this is a little an outer body experience, so to speak, but that's the way it is these days. So we'll do Q&A at the end. I hope all of you are on mute. If you are not on mute, please kindly do so for the benefit of all of us, the rest of us at least. We will distribute the PPT in the next few days. Should we disconnect, then we will likely hold this webinar some other day. So we're all broadcasting from our houses. Things don't tend to go perfect sometimes. We will have a short screen break at 3 minutes. For 3 minutes after about an hour and 15 minutes, because it kind of, you're concentrating looking at a screen. It gets a little heavy. So we'll be doing that in about an hour and 15 minutes. So with that, let's move on. This is it's a quote from one of the ladies who went from nothing to a very successful career, Barbara Corcoran, and her quote is very apt, especially in these days. We tend to think about what could have been, should have been, and you know what? It's in the past. We just have to pick up where we are today and move on. And you'll see through this class that there are ways in which you can rebuild your net worth and really grow it exponentially, to be honest with you. So, disclaimer, I'm going to be talking about some tax breaks and so on and so forth, and I'm not a CPA and I'm not a lawyer. So please understand that I'm not giving you any tax advice or legal advice. We have other mentors who can share with you a little bit more, but in the end, it's your own lawyer or CPA who's going to take, who is best suited for your needs. About me, I have been at it for a long time. I used to be in IT, had an engineering and MBA, and then started my own company several years back, sold it, And then kind of in and out being in real estate. I really did it the wrong way. Like Bill said, you know, you learn from the mistakes of uh, many of us, and that's especially true of me. I have made mistakes, which is why I put this. One of the reasons why I put this class together is to show so that many of you will avoid those mistakes and what I've learned through the years. So I'm in multifamily now. I used to be in single family quite a bit, but now I'm mostly in multifamily. I do have still some single family rentals, and I might start doing it again a little bit just because we'll talk about that in succeeding slides. The objectives today. So in the last, the objectives today, sorry. I'm going to talk about how you can buy single family rentals for a lower price. Now, if you, those of you attended part one, you know, the examples I gave you was of a house with an ARV. Now remember ARV, that term, 150,000. Well, and we talked about buying it at full price. But today we're going to talk about how we can buy it for a lot lower price. Okay, actually much lower. And then that, because you have less cash in the deal, that increases your cash on cash, which is the widely used term in real estate dramatically. A matter of fact, you can even make it infinite. And I kid you not, that's happening to some folks. So this is the agenda. The only thing that's missing at the end is the Q&A. I should have put that down, but so this is a brief recap of what we are going to go through over the next, I assume about hour and a half. We'll have Q&A also thrown in there. So we're going to talk about all these topics. So first one, a recap of what we discussed in the last session, part one. So as I said, we talked about buying a house for 150,000, and we talked about the advantages of leverage, which is a loan, and using a loan, you can dramatically increase your ability to buy more because you are putting less into the deal. This is a quirk of US tax laws. Maybe it's not a quirk, it's intended to be that way. And that's what I talked about a lot. There are a lot of tax breaks in the real estate sector, oil and gas, and financial. So if you're in these three sectors, you are taking money effectively from those, in my view, this is my personal view, from those who are working for someone else and drawing a W-2 or a 1099, in my opinion. And because the taxes that you are paying are effectively subsidizing these industries. But that's the way it is, and I intend to take advantage of it. And I would urge those of you listening in also to do the same thing. So we talked about how you could buy one property for 100% cash, which would give you a total of 290. No, that doesn't look right. It's a typo, folks. You can buy 4 properties that can result in a total of $500,000. So you're buying it for 150,000, 4 properties now, 4 properties, each worth 150,000, which becomes cumulatively worth about $500,000, versus the other buying with one single property, which will be roughly about 300K less. Okay, that's a huge difference. Actually, it's for 290. I think the difference is about 210,000. Still, 210,000 extra. Think about it for a minute, okay? And for those of you who come a little bit from a business background, or your mom or dads have told you, the power of compounding is immense. Do not make light of it. every dollar that you save or make more over a long period adds to a whole lot of money. As I said, there's tax benefit. It's a huge wealth multiplier. If you look at old money in Texas, a lot of them who have immense amount of wealth, you'll find one of the common things is they have invested heavily in real estate. And there's a good reason why. We talked about the importance of cash on cash. That's the ultimate metric, because it doesn't matter what that property is actually earning. What matters is how much did you put in and how much are you getting out. So if you buy stocks that is worth $100, you're going to measure it against how much you put in, which is $100. So if you have a stock goes to 120, you made 20% gain, right? That's how you look at it. That's exactly how you look at it for real estate as well. It matters what cash went out of your pocket. Don't focus on what the overall value of the property is. It's nice to focus on that, but that's not where your main focus is, folks. Just remember that. And finally, minimizing the cash that you will put out of your pocket, which again, through the miracle of tax benefits in our US tax laws, allows you to dramatically increase your cash on cash while minimizing the cash out of your pocket. So some questions I received from a bunch of emails that you were kind enough to ask me. One was leverage. Isn't it bad getting loans? Well, let me just say that loans in general, you have to be careful. So if you charge something on a credit card and go out there and fund an expensive vacation, I'm not advocating that at all. That does not give you any return whatsoever other than some fleeting feel-good feeling, which kind of disappears as the moment you get back. And all you have is a bunch of pictures. I'm talking about the ability to buy with a loan and hard asset. I'm sorry, my pointer keeps on disappearing because of the way this is set up. It's a hard asset. It's an actual asset, okay? It's a real property. That's a legal term. Real property that produces monthly income. That, when you use loan to acquire that, that is good, folks. Obviously, you don't put every single dollar into this buying properties. You want to have reserves because you never know. Like, for example, right now. You have to have reserves just in case. And then I noticed that some of you are wanting to buy distressed properties before you had any experience in buying single family properties and looking after them. Please. That's one of the reasons why I'm teaching this. I've made those mistakes, okay? Crawl before you can walk, you know, all that stuff. So do not make that mistakes. These are fraught times. When is a bad time? When you are in a hurry, right here. Or when you have money burning a hole in your pocket and you're desperate to deploy it. That is a time that usually results in poor decisions. And that's in Fortune 500 across the world, as well as at the individual level. Let's recap again the last time what, this particular, this table, what it's saying that is you're buying $150,000 ARV house at a full price. So this is, you're buying it at full price. That means you're not buying it at a discount, okay? And you are getting 2% year-on-year rent escalation, which is normal. Typically in my contracts, I try and get 3% at least. With added asset appreciation, because the asset itself is appreciating, right? So you're getting rental income and you're also getting asset appreciation as well. So I've assumed 2%, which is reasonable over the long period. So what it does is it results in 10 years that with cash, you are at 169,000 in total cash flow versus 361,000 when you are buying on loan. Again, this is full price. You're paying 25% of the value of the house, 150,000, which is 37,500 into each house. That allows you to buy 4. That's a simple math. And the other example was with no added asset appreciation, then this is what it turned out to be. Okay, so the summary of it all. You are getting cash on no loan of 8.33%, okay? If you did not go on loan and the house rented for $1,500 a month, then the cash on cash was coming out to be 8.33. I'm just again regurgitating what we discussed last time. With a loan, it came out to be 14%. So you can see right away, so it's kind of like buying $100 worth of stock. Do you want $8 or do you want $14 each year? Which one do you want? It's pretty simple. So 14 is better than 8. It comes with a little bit of risk. Like I said, you mitigate that with cash reserves. So what it does is, and you have the original asset also. Don't forget that. And a lot of it is mostly tax-free income. Think about that for a minute, okay? I'll keep on harping on it, and I'm not going to harp on it after this slide much. That's the big reason why real estate is so popular and why you'll find a whole bunch of multi-millionaires and billionaires in real estate. The tax benefits are tremendous in the US. Which investors buy property at full price like we discussed in webinar part 1? Uninformed investors, which you folks are no longer uninformed because you are attending this webinar and you're making, you're informing yourself with a different way of generating wealth. Those who are not interested in putting in the work, so you can have people who know the right way, but still will go about buying it at full price, which is fine for whatever reason. They don't want to put in the work. Maybe they're retired, old, what have you. Or hasty investors like I discussed in the previous slide. That's when you will make mistakes with ample amounts of cash. You will make bad decisions, okay? So the best way to earn lower cash on cash is to buy with 100% cash. So buying rental houses at full price, therefore, is inefficient. Now let's look at a powerful way to grow your portfolio and your net worth. So, which brings me to the next point in the webinar, which is a primer on what's called hard money versus long-term loan. So in part 1, we discussed about long-term loan, okay? We didn't talk about hard money. This thing called, what the heck is hard? Money is all hard. So we're going to talk about that some. So again, so the cash on no loan when you're buying full price, it was 8.33. With loan, it was 14.01%. Okay, I want you to remember those numbers, 8.33 and 14%. So how does one boost the cash on cash? How does one buy more with less cash? In brief, the answer is you buy properties that need work. So then you're buying at a much lower price. What it allows you to do, and we'll see that through examples on the succeeding slides, it allows you to buy more. And that's a huge game changer. With the same amount of cash, you can buy more. Think about that for a minute. Do you want to buy one stock for $100? Or do you want to buy 10 different stocks that are actually worth 100, but you're buying it with leverage. Obviously, you don't want to borrow when you go into the stock market. It can be pretty dicey, as we are finding out right now. So welcome to the world of hard money and private money in the US, which is what allows you to buy properties that need work. That means they are not at the top of their game. So let's look at this property on the left-hand side, how it looks. Actually, these pictures are more flattering than they were. This is a property that I bought and I remodeled. What you see on the right-hand side is the remodel version, okay? It actually looked worse. There's supposed to be a garbage dumpster here, which is why I had to take a picture at this angle, but it was actually worse. There was a tree growing up here. It was just a mess. This whole thing was mess. This was all covered with poison ivy, just FYI. This is after the so-called clear up, basic clear up, believe it or not. This is the backside again with the basic clear out. There was a big patio out here which was covered and crumbling. Literally, if you stood under it, you were not sure it's going to come crashing on your head. And there was a shed. If you see over here, all this wood over here, it was termite infested. That's what the property was, and I bought it. Okay, one of the dumb mistakes I made in my life, this is one of them. It looks like this now, but it was not the best and most efficient way of buying a property, which is why I do these things. So this is what the back side of the property now looks like. It's all nice and good. This is what the kitchen back then looked like. This is after we had destroyed the cabinets, which were in total shambles because they were termite infested. So actually they were not termite infested. There was termite infesting, termite stuff going up the wall. So all this was torn apart, and this is what the new kitchen looks like today. This is an actual picture, not touched up or anything like that. This is what the living room looked like, and this is what the living room looked like today. At the time, just to walk inside the house was a bit scary. This was all boarded up. All the windows were boarded up. It was all dark. You couldn't even see what the heck was going on. Anyway, so what was the process in brief? The process in brief is you hunt for a suitable property, and we're going to talk about that on succeeding slides. So for now, just bear with me for a few minutes. You're acquiring a property with an ARV, which is after it has been rehabbed, the value will be 150,000, okay? We're going to buy it with a hard money loan. Say, we'll buy it for 92,000 is the purchase price. You'll wonder why we are buying it at 92,000 and who the heck is going to give it to you for 92,000. We'll discuss that in brief later. So this is a rent potential, because you got to know this in advance when you're buying. What is the rent potential of this property? What is going to be the rehab, the remodeling that you're going to be putting in to make it worth 150,000? So we're assuming, for the purposes of today's example, that the rehab is 20,000, okay? Just nice round numbers. Then we are going to go through and rehab the property. And then this house that was worth 92,000 is now going to become worth 150,000, okay? And it's going to appraise by the bank at 150,000. This is not rocket science. This is not something hokey or something like that. This is being done day in and day out all across the United States. You're seeing it on HGTV, by the way. You might have seen the Property Brothers, and you might have seen, there's another guy who comes on, Musa or someone like that is his name. He does, he remodels properties in the LA area. That's pretty much what he's doing. So this is doable. So are there really such deals? How come? It's a good question, okay? And it's a good, you feel skeptical. How the hell am I going to buy $100 stock for whatever, $50 or $40? Yeah, the short answer is, are there such deals? Yes, but require work and experience. If you don't have experience today, please do not expect to land this kind of a deal that I discussed on the previous slide. Okay, that's highly unlikely. So distressed properties, these are properties that went downhill due to neglect of the owner and or lack of funds, and this happens quite a bit. You'll have people who will stretch themselves to get into a house, and then issues happen with the house, and then they can't keep up with it. The foundation starts to get messed up, the roof springs a leak, and they don't have the money to fix it, and that property just steadily over the years keeps on deteriorating bit by bit before it really starts to look terrible. You can also have people who died and the property was run down and the heirs don't want any part of it. They're like, the hell with that. Foreclosures. Again, foreclosures by definition means people who could not afford to make loan payments, and chances are if they could not afford to make the loan payments on that house, they could not afford to fix the property. Because guess what? If they had the cash, they would have paid the loan. So people divert all their money towards the loan and for food. And there's nothing left for the property, and the property starts to go downhill pretty fast. You also have tax liens. People have failed to put up a tax liens for whatever reason. Such sellers are knowingly, they know that only investors are going to buy, because if they try and list it through a realtor, the realtor is going to say, you need to fix this, you need to fix that. Not possible. So the only ones who are going to buy are the investors. And why are they selling to begin with? They're selling because they want to get out. They want to take whatever money they can. They do not want anymore to put up with the loan. They don't want that foreclosure on that record. All kinds of reasons why they'll come, why they will be ready to sell. And there are people who will go out there who specialize in this, called wholesalers, okay? That's what they're doing. They're canvassing all these neighborhoods and convincing these people to part with the property, convincing them that, look, we're going to buy this property and some investor is going to buy it. And when that investor buys, there's going to be closing costs involved. And that investor is then going to fix it up. So there's fixing up costs involved. There's financing costs involved because you got to get loans. There's interest and points and so on and so forth. Holding costs, like I said, including paying for utilities and stuff like that. And there's going to be rehab involved because you got to fix it up. And then you got to allow those people to make a profit. Isn't that right, Mr. Homeowner? And Mr. Homeowner agrees and says, yeah. No one's going to buy it and just live in this dump. They all know that. And so that's why they part with that property that is worth $150,000 for $92,000 that I had on that previous slide. Okay, this happens. So let's talk about hard money or private money. There's a slight difference between the two, but for today's example, let's just assume it's the same, okay? Because when it comes to terms, they're roughly the same. Versus long-term money. Long-term money is what we discussed last time, is what we bought property with. It's a 30-year mortgage and all that good stuff. It's a lower interest rate. So the interest rates there, I put 5.5, it's not 5.5 today, it's about 4.2. Okay. When I did some refi about a few months back, it was 4.6 or 4.5, something like that. So it's gone down actually. The interest rate for hard money is higher. There's a teaser rate, which is for first 2 months or 1 month or 3 months, they'll have it at 7%. But typically they're trying to make around 14%, folks. There's going to be points involved with this kind of a loan, 2 to 3% points. So if your loan is 100,000, you'll be paying $2,000 to $3,000 in points. And then every 6 months, and that's only for the first 6 months. So after the end of 6 months, you will pay another, another 1%. And so every 3 months, you'll be paying an extra 1% point. So that loan gets pretty expensive if you're going to keep it for a long term, which is not the intent. Even the lender is not interested in giving it to you at long term for these kind of interest rates. And then here you see on the long term side. So the term of the loan over here is like 1 to 12 months. They might stretch it more than that. They'll allow you to, but you're paying points, okay, every 3 months. So it gets pretty expensive, and your interest rate at that point will be 14%. This is like, people like me might give out private money loans, for example. I've done that once before. But more often people have formed companies, and they have even obtained licenses to allow them to lend. And so these are hard money lenders. They're getting the source of money from individual investors. And in some cases, they're also getting it from banks, by the way, small banks. The long-term money is eventually backed by Freddie and Fannie Mae, who end up buying these loans, which is why you're getting a 30-year mortgage for 4.2%, okay? And then I know in Canada, they have even 40-year mortgages. So the lending criteria here, and this is the key. This is the key. Right here, this last row. They are loaning it based on what they believe the house is going to be worth after you fix it. They're going to take a look at what all you're going to fix, who the person is who's going to do the fixing, what all you're going to fix. You're going to put in new flooring, new paint, and what each of those items are going to cost. They're going to lend to you based on your bank balance, and they're more flexible on the credit score. On this side, they're going to be loaning you based on the appraised value. You got to have 2 years of tax return, which also, by the way, I think you got to have it on, well, maybe or maybe not. I'm not sure. I don't remember now. And you have to have some income. You need to be able to show some income to them in the last 2 years of your tax returns, as well as your current year. They want to know if that income is still continuing. So that was a bit of a primer on hard money versus long-term money. I hope that was a bit enlightening. And if you're not fully understanding all of it, that's okay. That's okay. You're just being introduced to these concepts. The objective behind this class is not to make you so good that you'll go out there and do these kind of deals right away. Like I said, you got to walk before you crawl before you walk. But you need to be aware that these are the ways in which you can go about it, and you'll pick up experience pretty quick once you start doing it. Okay, so we're going to now go to the next section, which is acquiring single family property. So the questions that come up when you're buying these properties is, where do I buy? When do I buy? What to buy? How to buy? And who to buy from? So we're going to touch on each of these in the succeeding slides. So, where to buy? This is what is referred to in the industry as workforce housing. Workforce are blue-collared folks, and typically, and unfortunately, they are hard-pressed to be able to buy a house on their own, and therefore they are being forced to rent. So they start out renting apartments, then they have a family, and then they need to, because of a family, they got to move out into a house. So that's who we are targeting, because that is the most significant part of where these kind of deals are likely to be, that will generate good returns and give you, these are strong rental markets. So high priced suburbs where some of you might be staying, these are bad areas in terms of in returns. Unless you happen to live in California, you're living in San Marin County, where how average houses are whatever, million and a half, 2 million, and they keep going up every year by 5% or 10%, which is kind of ridiculous. So you're not buying there for rent, but you're buying there for land appreciation. It's different. And you're buying houses that have to be family friendly. Avoid flood prone areas that you will run into, or houses that are near toxic dump. I know that's kind of like saying, yeah, how do I know that? Well, you need to drive around the property in that area and find out what's going on. You need to do your research, reading the local newspaper. Local newspapers tend to cover these things pretty good. And in Houston, there are some properties next to toxic areas, okay? Unfortunately, big companies tend to dump toxic stuff where poor people tend to live. And you need to be aware of where you want to avoid buying. By railroads, you can buy, but the problem is, unless you're buying in a dense area like Philadelphia or some area like that, people are not going to want to be near railroads, okay? They don't want that loud clanging noise 24/7. Avoid areas near nightclubs for sure. Remember, they're focusing on family friendly, folks, where kids will not feel threatened, where the parents will not feel threatened for their kids. And finally, this is important, 30 to 40 minutes driving distance from you, either from your house where you live or from your place of work. Bottom line is, when you start rehabbing and renting, especially when you're rehabbing, okay, and when you're about to put it out on rent, that's where you will consume a lot of your time. And if the property is too far, you're going to say, you know what, I'll do it tomorrow or 2 days later. It doesn't work like that. Or at least I would caution you to not do that kind of stuff. Once you have rehabbed and rented it out, then it's easier afterwards. I mean, some of my properties, I just kind of occasionally drive just to make sure it's not burned down or a dump has come around the property, stuff like that, once a month. So in Houston area, which is where most of you are from, and if you are from outside of Houston, don't worry. The same logic applies really. All these areas that I've identified here, these are your middle class areas, lower middle class to middle class areas. That is where you're going to get the most bang for the buck. So if you look at this Houston area right here, all this from here to here is going to rent extremely well, okay, right here. And then on the west side of town, you have this area in Katy over here. Or actually, you have even this area right here, Alief. Going up north, you will have the whole Copperfield area. And this whole area, there's some new houses on this side. Avoid that. I keep losing my pointer, I apologize. And then as you follow Highway 6, all this is good rental area. Now, in some places it really gets run down, okay? Now, some of you will not want to rent in those areas, that's quite fine. Avoid, in that previous picture, avoid these areas. These are Sharpstown and Greens Point. Gun battles have broken out. They're known. There are known places where bad stuff happens. So you do not want to be in that area. When to buy? Be aware of cyclical patterns in real estate, okay, and the economy. So 6 months back, we were at the peak. And it's not like I'm saying this looking back, hindsight. You know when it is peak, when the deals start to become very skinny. People are trying to peddle to you with all kinds of inflated numbers, and you're looking at it and going, these numbers don't make sense. How am I supposed to make money? Well, that is the peak of the market, folks, because something bad is about to happen. And even if it hadn't been for COVID right now, the real estate market and the overall stock market would have eventually started to come down after the election. So it's a careful, but the flip side is, as when there's a downturn, it becomes hard to find renters. Not hard, a little bit more challenging. So if you are a pro at this, you will find renters, folks. So it's a careful balancing act between market price versus finding renters. Traditional recessions last for 6 to 9 months. Traditional. What this one will do, I have no idea. But in the past, if you think that is the recession, oh my God, this is not a good time to buy. Actually, that is a good time to buy. If you look at it historically, that is the good time to buy or try and get into it. 4 months of rehab, you have refied it, gotten your cash out, and then you try and look for renters and maybe even give them a lower price. So you'll find them. The other thing, when to buy. The down payment for loans tends to be influenced by the economic cycle. Today, if you were to buy a new house throughout the United States or most of the US, the banks are going to ask you to pay more in down payment, okay? But I checked with the lenders just before this webinar for the long-term for rentals. They're still lending at 75% of LTV, which is loan to value, or 75% of ARV. Because that has an impact on cash on cash, because if the bank is wanting you to put 35% on the property as a down payment, your cash on cash is going to go way south. So just be aware of that. What to buy? The 3-bed, like we discussed last time briefly, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage. It's called 322s. That's your bread and butter in the rental areas. You will get the most bang for your buck in that segment. The moment you start going bigger, more bedrooms, more square footage, your returns are going to fall. So that being said, I have a property that is 5 bedrooms, and it is a beautiful rental. It is my best cash flowing property that I have. It's in Pasadena. And so if you're from Houston, you know that Pasadena is populated by Latinos. Latinos, typically, you'll have 3 generations staying in one roof. I'm from India, and that's very common in India too, except here we sort of got away from it. But Latinos continue that. I think it's awesome. There's some downsides to it, but they're all pulled together. And so what they're looking for is more bedrooms. So this 5 bedrooms tends to be more popular, and literally when I put it out for rent, I mean, I'll have a bidding war just about. So 5 bedrooms will work in certain situations. If you're buying at the right price, that's most important, most important. Under $200,000 in ARV is where you want to stay at. At $100,000, let's say your cash on cash, I'm just taking as an example, is 20%. Do not expect if a house is worth 300,000, your cash on cash will be 20%. It won't. It just won't. It'll be a lot lower because the rent does not stay consistent with the value of the house. That's just the way it is. Because higher the value of the house and higher the rent, guess what? Those people can go out and buy their own houses. So it starts to break down. Stay under the square footage as much as you can. 2,000 square feet, 2,100, 2,200 can work, but just be aware that the lower the square footage, lower is going to be your remodeling cost. Keep losing my pointer, sorry, rehab cost. Built 1980 or later, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. The reason is lead paint prior to 78 and some other issues pop up to properties that are older. However, your best cash on cash returns are going to be in the pre-1978 properties. It's just the way it is. The properties afterwards cost more to buy. And so before 1978 turns out to be a better deal. But there are some issues you have to watch out for. We'll discuss that in a minute. You have to watch for HOA deed restrictions for renting. In most of Texas, like city of Houston, city of Austin, city of San Antonio, Dallas, that's not an issue, but just make sure when you go for closing, you have to make sure that the title company is checking for any of these exceptions, okay? You have to be, you get the whole HOA deed restrictions, and you have to make sure that that is not restricted. In some weird places, and I've known a situation in Florida where a person bought the property. He was living on the East Coast, and he bought the property in Florida. He had gone by there, came back, and closed on it long distance. Sorry, he didn't close on it. So he agreed to buy and everything, and then when the payment was due, and he had already paid a non-refundable deposit, the HOA came back and said, nope, we have the right to buy that property first. So there are some HOAs, believe it or not, in the US that have the right to buy that property instead of another buyer. Just be aware of that. They also have the right to deny the ability for a homeowner to rent their properties. Texas is a little bit freewheeling state. So what are some of the issues? What types, right? So houses built before 980, I told you, the cash flow very well. On the flip side, in 60s and 70s, many of these houses were built with aluminum wiring, which is a fire hazard. This right here, you see this plug? When the wires come in here, the contactors are made of some version of iron, whereas the wires are coming in are made of aluminum. And they have different coefficient, this is physics, of expansion. And then what ends up happening is over a period of time, a gap starts to form. And when there's a gap forming, you may have seen that in some lights, you'll see a sparking. So that sparking is because a gap is forming. And when you have aluminum wiring, that is much more common, and that can result in fire, and the whole thing can burn down. So there are ways to mitigate that. So don't be afraid, but just be aware of that. And if you have to change out the entire wiring, that can be pretty expensive. It'll cost you $2,000 to $3,000. Well, actually more. You'll have to take down all the sheetrock as well. The other thing, when in the older properties going up into the 80s, and this is something when you buy the properties, you have to go in the attic and see, because all the piping is in the attic. So it comes from underneath the ground and then goes up into the attic. And what's outside is irrelevant. That might be iron, it might be PVC. What matters is what's inside the house. So it goes above in the attic and then comes down along the side into the bathrooms and the sink areas. These properties, these pictures I've shown you on the left-hand side, these are iron. Galvanized iron was used. Over a period of time, you see this pipe over here, how much sediment it started to accumulate due to rust taking place. And that's why you'll start seeing in older properties, the pressure is pretty weak. Faucets don't come on full blast. Well, this is part of the reason. And then you'll see in the joints, this corrosion. So this is a giveaway that this property has cast iron. Now that being said, I have properties with this, by the way. So I'm not saying don't buy it. I'm just saying be aware of it and be aware of the issues, okay? I'm okay with it because I know worst case, yeah, it's gonna burst and then it's gonna result in some water. Okay, that'll give me the chance to rip it apart and then put in new piping and new everything. And you know, as long as it's worth something, the total rehab is whatever, let's say $10,000, I'll get insurance to pay for it minus the deductible. You know, that's, but you got to buy it at the right price. If you buy it at the right price, then these kind of remodeling is fine. Typically I ask, you know, you have any questions and so on and so forth to see if this is all registering or is it too detailed, but in a webinar, that's impossible. So let's go to the next slide. I hope you're finding this informational because I packed a lot of information in this PowerPoint. Another kind of house is what to buy. You will see this. This is pier and beam. This is the foundation. Typically, you're used to seeing these kind of foundation. This is your concrete foundation. It's called a slab. That's what we are used to seeing, okay? And most of the houses are like that, but as you go older and if you go into the countryside, you will see these kind of houses. Let me tell you, these kind of houses, they cash flow pretty darn good, okay? And there's nothing wrong with that. You can fix it up. It's not at all hard to fix. In fact, if there's something wrong with the foundation, these houses are actually even more easier to fix, believe it or not. I'm not saying the costs will be lower overall. That's not what I'm saying, but I'm just saying these houses are no more of a headache than this. Matter of fact, I'll come to it in a minute later on when we talk about foundations. This will end up becoming better in certain situations. So two kinds of foundations you got to watch out for. If you are living in the East Coast or up north, you're not seeing any of this. You're seeing this. And then you'll typically see down here, you'll see a basement. So now how to buy, right? So I'm taking this example here. So just kind of ignore this writing to the left here and just let's focus on the numbers, okay? The ARV of the house is 150, okay? We're buying it at 92,500, which ends up being about, I think, 70% of 150. It is actually 70% of ARV minus the repairs, which will come out to be this number right here. And then there's repairs involved. So now you're buying it, okay? You're buying it at, darn this pointer. Okay, here we go. You're buying it at 92,500. And I think I have to keep moving my my mouse to keep the pointer, but well, it still disappeared. and then the repairs are 20,000. So the total and the loan amount that you'll get is not going to be this plus this. It's going to be actually less than 92,000, which is the purchase price plus the rehab. And the reason is the hard money lenders want you to keep some skin in the game. So they'll give you a loan for 101,000, okay? Your closing cost will come out to be about 6,500. Your total interest and holding costs, let's say assume, and I think the assumptions are on the next slide, will come out to be about 43.95, okay? Your total cash out of your pocket is 27,395. This is to acquire the property and then to rehab it. So that entire duration, you are out of pocket 27,000 bucks. You with me so far? Then we go ahead and rehab the property, okay? Like I said, the property is now worth 150. And let me tell you, it will be worth that because when you do that property up front and you've gotten pre-approvals with all the values that you've given, all the things you're going to fix, they'll tell you that if you do these things, there's a good chance that the property will appraise for 150,000, okay? So this is a pretty educated estimate when you're buying over here. So it's not like you are taking a shot in the dark, okay? That's not what it is. So let's say the value of the property is 150. Now, for a bank to loan you, just doing some calculation. So at 75% off of 150,000, the bank is saying, Miss Jane, I'm going to give you a loan for 112,500 against this property right here. And then you got to go through another closing because now you got a loan and they're going to file a lien on the property. And so you got to go through another loan, another closing. So that cost is this. But here's the thing. You got $112,000, folks. You had given 27,395 out of your pocket. Forget that now. So 112,500, you're going to then pay off this original loan, 92,500. You're still left with about 20,000 extra. So 20,000 extra that you're left with, minus this 27,395 that's already out of pocket, plus 3,500 will come out to be 19,645. That is finally after you have done the refi. It's called a refi. You are now, when you look at your bank balance, the total amount of money that has gone out of your bank balance, out of your pocket, is 19,645. 20,000 to be approximate. You bought a property for $150,000 with only $20,000 out of your pocket, folks. I'm not sure if that may have registered, but that's the whole point. So what we have done here, I'm just listed it over here and you can look at it later on. You bought a distressed property, you bought it with hard money, you rehabbed it, and thereby you improved the value of the property to $150,000, and then you did another loan. Result, you have only $19,000 still out of pocket in the deal. And a property that's worth $150,000 that is now eminently rentable, and you'll be getting rents. So again, like I said, put differently, you have bought a $150,000 property for $19,645 out of your pocket. So you bought $100 stock for $20. That's the effect. And that this happens because of all the provisions in the tax code. what are the things you have to watch out for when you're buying? When people sell to you and say, Jane, look, hey, this is a really awesome property, blah, 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 and they'll give you all these numbers, the ARV is this and blah, the things where people tend to be off is the ARV. They'll overestimate the ARV and they'll underestimate the rehab just to try and make that numbers work, to make it look so beautiful. So you got to peel back that onion. And that's where the experience comes in, that you got to understand this. And the other thing they'll tell you is that it will rent for $1,500 a month. Well, excuse me. This is where if you have access to your local MLS, you got to go in and do the comps yourself. And you have to see what other properties, similar properties with the kind of remodeling that you're going to do sold for. And is it really 150,000? Secondly, you have to see what other properties in that same square footage and configuration, whether it's 3-bedroom or 4-bath or 4-bedroom, so on and so forth, what did they rent for? So you got to confirm that, folks, because you're buying this to rent it out. So you got to confirm these rents at the time or before you buy. And the rehabbing, whether it's going to be 20,000 or 25 or 15, that is only going to come with a little bit of experience. So again, to restate, we bought a property. How did we buy distressed? That needs a lot of work. So when it needs a lot of work, that's a distressed property. These properties are being bought by wholesalers who in turn will sell it to you. You're using hard money to buy the property for $92,000, which no other buyer, like if they were going to go and live there, they'll not get a loan for $92,000 because the bank is going to say, you know what, this property is not livable. I showed you those examples, those pictures, right? There's no way that property would have been bought by a person who was going to come and stay there. The only way they would have done it is by paying cash. Who the hell is going to do that? If they had so much cash, they'd be buying some much more expensive property. So, what we call the end buyer who's going to stay at a house like that will not buy, because even if they were willing to stay in that house, the bank is not going to give them a loan. It's called, in this industry language, the house will not appraise. And if it doesn't appraise, the loan is not going to go through, which means that buyer is not going to be able to close. So that is why it's called, these are properties that require work. They might be called distressed, and that's why you're getting it at a lower price. So using traditional, and then afterwards, you're using traditional lenders who are willing to give you a long-term loan. So that results in this conclusion right here. Okay, it's been about 1 hour. We'll take a 3-minute screen break. So in 3 minutes, we will meet again. I know I said hour and 15 minutes, but I think this might be a good time. I hope that's okay with you. So exactly 3 minutes, we will reconvene. It's 2:04 at 2:07. Thank you. Let's make it 5 minutes, please. That will give us some more time. Again, 5 minutes. Yeah. No. Okay. Let's get going, folks. While we were on a break, I got an email. I get these emails from wholesalers, and I got an email saying there's a house. And I get these daily, quite a bit actually. The ARV on this house is 220,000, and the asking price is 130,000. Okay, so you're buying a $220,000 house for 130,000, and the estimated cash on cash is 23%. Estimated out of pocket is 13,236. So you'll be buying a $220,000 house for 13,326. I want to show you what's on my phone screen. Okay, this just came, so I'm not sure you can see this. So I apologize if it was not clear, but I mean, you run into this kind of stuff. So what I'm trying to tell you is be patient. Don't get impatient. I'm not getting those kind of deals. You will once you know what you're doing. This particular deal is in Alvin. So if you're staying on the south side of part of town or in Pearland or Clear Lake, that's a great place to buy. Alvin is a pretty strong rental area. So let's move on. Again, at the risk of repeating, we bought a house for 92,000 and made it worth $150,000 by spending $20,000 in rehab, and then we cashed out. So this takes me to the next slide here. This is a busy slide. I don't want you to get lost in the details. These are different scenarios, like it says. Assume $150,000 ARV, repairs are 20K, and these are multiple scenarios. So the repairs are 20K applies only to 3, 4, 5, and 6 scenario, okay? 3, 4, 5, 6. 1 and 2 is where we bought it with full price, which is what we discussed in part 1. So I just went ahead and put the same numbers down here. So you can ignore this column right here, but this is just a reference to give you as to what happens with when you buy a distressed property, okay? So here we said scenario 1 was you buy with full cash. Number 2 was you're buying a property that's completely up to date, nothing to be done. You walk in, it's perfect. And all you got to do is rent it out. And so in my last class, one of the folks pointed out I didn't have closing costs. I didn't have closing costs because I didn't want to complicate the matter. But I included it this time because now we're doing more realistic comparisons because we're now getting a little bit more advanced. So I included closing costs So that's why the number, the cash on cash will change. So now, what is the difference between 3, 4, 5, 6? I've described it over here, okay? I want you to pay attention to 3 and 4. So 3 and 4 is where you are buying it at 75% of ARV. Mind you, when you go into investing, people are trying to buy it at 70% of ARV minus repairs. I'm saying buy it at 75, i.e. at a higher price than what many people are trying to buy at. So in other words, this is when you're really experienced, you'll start experiencing these kind of numbers here. But when you're not as experienced and you at least know rehab, you will start experiencing these kind of numbers. But what is the difference between 3 and 4? The difference between 3 and 4 is you're doing this. God, I keep losing this pointer. Number 3 is with your own money, so you're not taking a loan. And same thing with number 5, you're doing it with your own money. Okay, that's the difference. So here you're buying with 70% off of ARV. Here you're buying at 75% of ARV. And number 3 is you're using your own money. Number 5, you're using your own money, okay, to buy. You're not taking a hard money loan. So, which is why you'll see this number 0 for loan amount. It's 0. And here you're getting a loan. So consequently, your closing cost in number 3 will be 3,000, and over here will be 6,500, 3,000, 6,500. Your acquisition price is the same, except over here, you're buying it cheaper. At this point, don't ask me why this is cheaper. Experienced investors are buying it cheaper at that price. That's all I can say. The repairs is the same and all. Your interest and holding costs will change because here you've got no loan. All you're doing is paying for utilities. And here you're paying for interest and holding cost. So what's happening here is because you bought out of pocket, your out of pocket cash, because you bought it with cash, came out to be $115,900. Here, because you use a hard money loan, your out of pocket is $27,395. You have not remodeled it yet, okay? You just bought it. And these are the closing costs. And then the similar out of pocket cash numbers with 5 and 6. Then you go ahead and remodel the property. The property is now worth $150,000, okay? So the loan that the bank is going to give you, we are assuming 75% off of loan to value. Some banks will go as high as 80%, but I'm assuming 75% for our example. And this is what I would also encourage you to do. Stay at 75, don't go higher than 75 because the overall structure becomes more risky. You'll end up with lower cash out of your pocket if you do 80% off of loan, because if someone's giving you loan for 80% of the value of the property, you'll have hardly any money. All that money's come back to you. So over here, the out-of-pocket cash, which is your all-important barometer in buying a house. That's this last line right here. So as you'll see in number 3, it's 6,900. In number 4, with a loan, it's 19,645, which is exactly what I had on the previous slide. If you're buying it, what's called deeper in value, then you hardly have 600. In that one house I told you, that 5-bedroom house, I have no money in my house at all. There's 0, nothing. So all the money has come out after I, improved the property. So this happens, okay? You can end up with 0 over here, right here. So these are the assumptions. I'm not going to go through it in detail, but I've assumed 4 months. It's just a comment here. If you think your rehab is going to take 2 months, assume it's going to take 3. If you think it's going to take 3, assume it's going to take 4, 4.5. You got to tack on an extra month, month and a half. And then when you do a refi, that takes another at least 3 weeks to 4 weeks, depending on how quickly you move. So during that time, you are paying hard money interest, which is that 14% I told you. It could be 12%, 13, 14, whatever. And you're also paying property taxes during that time. This is to the right is a screen capture of a hard money offer that came to my email. And I just kind of did a screen capture to show you that this is not BS, okay? People are lending at these rates. So these guys have got a teaser rate of 6.95% interest only. I can guarantee you that's only for the first 2 months, because you can't do hard money for too long with 6.9%. They are only charging 1.5% origination fees. I have assumed 2 to 3% here, right here. 3% is expensive, 2% is the normal, but some will charge 3, but then they'll give you lower interest rates. So it's kind of like, you know, get one, lose the other. Here they're saying hard money up to 24 months. You do not want to be rehabbing for 24 months, folks. If you're doing that, there's something seriously wrong with what you're doing. And it's saying no payment for the first 2 months. So this is just a screen capture of these terms over here that I've put up. Okay, so now we're coming to the juicy part. The juicy part is I've just kept these numbers here. If you go on the previous slides, so this right here, that's what you'll see on the succeeding slide, okay? That's exactly that row, this right here. I'm going to assume now not 1,500 in rent, but 1,400 in rent. I'm going to go down. Let's be more conservative. So the annual rent received is your first row right here. It's the same for all. Less principal and interest because you got a loan in some cases. So this is when you got a loan when you're going to do a refi. Here you're buying completely in cash. That was our example from part 1, which was not the best way to do deals. So this is your principal and interest right here. And you can see the assumptions on the previous slide, what the interest rate I've assumed. Less property taxes. Okay, actually when you buy distressed and you buy with, when you buy distressed as opposed to full price, these property taxes will be lower than this right here. So actually these numbers come out even lower, okay? So I'm not sure if you're catching my drift. You're buying a property for $92,000. You're rehabbing for 20. When you go in front of tax authorities, your local tax authorities, you're going to claim that this is worth only about whatever, 100,000, 110. You're going to fight tooth and nail, folks. But here, when you bought it for 150, they're going to say, you bought it for 150. What the hell are you cribbing about? This property is worth 150,000. And then accordingly, they're going to tax you. Tax rates are pretty high in the state of Texas. We have no personal income tax, but we have very high property taxes. And that's what you're seeing over here. So, and less insurance, same amount of insurance. So this is your net cash received in each scenario. And what you will see over here is your cash on cash return here, all important right here. So here you'll see that in scenario 3, which is what you bought with cash, and you bought it at 75% of ARV, you have ended up with 58.74% return cash on cash. There's only 6,900 still left in the deal. You didn't spend 150,000 like this example one over here, 153 actually. You only spent 7,000 net after everything. Here you spent close to 20,000. So your returns are 20.63. They'll actually be more because your taxes are going to be lower. In this particular case, you'll notice the return is 675%. That is not a typo, folks. That is real. Like I said, in my one particular property, this is infinite over here because this number here is 0. I got no money in the deal. And so whatever I'm getting based on money that I don't even have in the deal. That's infinite. The denominator is 0. So these are the scenarios you can look at it when you look at the, when you get the slides. So I hope the whole point of this exercise here was to impress upon you, number one, that you can buy properties for less than full value. And what are you buying? You're buying properties that need work. And once you do that work, including by buying with loan, twice, hard money first time, and second time with the long-term loan, you'll still end up with only, I'm describing you to the worst situation with $20,000 out of your pocket. So if you have $150,000 to work with, guess what? You can buy, what is it, more than 7 properties, folks. I'm not sure you're understanding the power of leverage. This is the whole reason why real estate ends up being so rewarding if you do it right, if you do it in an informed manner. Not only that, as I said before in my part 1 of my webinar, this is all going to be tax-free, folks. It's just the way it is. That's the way the tax code is. The depreciation you will get from that house is going to offset this passive, I'm sorry, not over here, over here. This is all going to be tax-free. Now again, your situation is different from mine. I'm not your accountant. Please go and talk to your accountant, but this is what's happening to me. This is all tax-free. And all these expenses here that you're seeing, not the principal portion, but the interest, and most of it is interest when you're paying a loan in the beginning. That is all tax deductible. But here's the thing, you know, when Congress and Trump passed that, whatever, you know, stuff 3 years back or 2 years back, that, that big deal that was supposed to give you money in your pocket, they took away your exemption for the loan that you're paying on your houses. But they didn't take away the loan that investors pay for rental properties. So that should tell you that the tax code is tilted in favor of those who are wanting to, I guess, make a business out of real estate. That's what this is all about. So I'm just summarizing here as to what happened. You were able to buy a $150,000 house for $20,000. You can now buy a total of 7 properties. If, you know, let's just assume you could buy the similar kind of properties and the same kind of math, each worth $150,000. Okay, you're bringing down a $150,000 property for only $20,000. Let's go back. You are getting on each property a net cash of $4,053 in this particular example right here. If you are doing 7 with that same 150,000, you are at $28,000, not monthly. Sorry, this is a typo. Yearly. But consider you only put in 150,000 into it and you're getting 28,000 in income which is all going to be tax-free. And it's all coming in your mailbox, folks. So if you have a job, if you fall sick, you lose your job, or if you get hit by a truck, that money stops. This stuff, this kind of money continues. And because you bought 7 properties, you get the appreciation on 7 properties and not 1 if you were to buy 1 with cash. So this is the power of leverage, what we're seeing. And then add that 6,900 out of cash out of your pocket over here in this particular example, the math gets even more mind-boggling. You can buy 21 houses for 150,000. Now, is that going to happen to you? No, more than likely not. But to a lot of people in Houston, it is happening. And those people have been at it for 5, 7, 8, 10 years. They've been at it religiously. So if you're determined, this will happen. This is not some numbers I'm pulling out of the sky. Setting expectations. So it's very difficult to hit a home run in your first 3 deals. Don't expect those numbers. I'm telling you that right now. You got to crawl before you walk, blah, blah, blah. You need to have an extensive network. The more deals that you are able to see in your funnel, like the one I just showed you in Alvin, the more you have the ability to pick and choose which deals are likely to be 30 minutes to 40 minutes away from you in driving distance, that is producing the right kind of returns for you. You need to develop a good handle on rehab estimates, because when these deals come to you and you go and see those deals, you got to know as you're walking through the house, okay, this is an issue, this is going to cost this much. You need to develop a little bit of, you need to develop some expertise so you can become good at it, which is why I said, do not expect great returns in the first 3 deals. But the moment you start doing first, second, third, then you start to understand. You need to become good at going through the MLS, which is where all the previous properties that were sold at are kept. You got to know how to do the comps, therefore. And so you know that if you were to do an X amount of work, that property is going to be worth Y amount. You should know this before you buy that house. You should know what that house is going to rent for. So if you don't have access to MLS, there's third party for a fee that you pay monthly. One of them is Propelio, and there might be real acquisitions too that can give you the same thing. There's a few out there, okay? In my case, I have access to MLS, so I haven't bothered with this. But I did subscribe to Propelio for a few months for a different reason, to get leads for houses that might be in a distressed situation. So the higher return 50% that I talked about is possible. I mean, I've met several people who are achieving this, folks. So this is not something hearsay. I've personally met these people. One of the things that has not been factored in is repair expenses over the years. And there's ways to minimize that. We'll talk about that in the next slide. So this is the conclusion. What is your buying formula? You're buying based off of 75% of ARV minus rehab. If you can buy it at 70% of rehab, 70% of ARV, that means if the property is worth this much, you're buying it this much. If you can buy it for this much, even better. But it's going to be hard. That's the practical part of it that I want to bring to your attention. So are people not buying it at 70% of ARV? Hell yes, they're buying. But those people are experienced people. They have a broader network of sellers that they can rely on, or they're able to generate those deals themselves. So that stuff is happening. So ideally, like I said, 70% of ARV, then you have the possibility for infinite returns. You'll have no money left in the deal. All of that money you'll have brought out. So this is an example of har.com, which is for the Houston market. In har.com, I've pulled up a screen of, I'll tell you down below, wherever it doesn't, but this is where my daughter had bought a property, 3-bedroom, 2-bath sometime back. I just pulled up the last 12 months of sales. Okay, that's what this is. What do you look for when you pull up this thing? This is again in har.com, and you need to have realtor access to get in. If you don't have realtor access, you won't get this access. When you might get through, if you subscribe to the third party, other kinds of software. So days on market right here, this column. What that's telling you is how quickly those properties are moving. That means how popular they are with buyers. This is pretty darn good, folks. So this is active. So this has been active for 2 days, 56 days. Ignore that. So before that, the ones that sold start about over here. So this sold in 27 days, 8 days, 41. This is time to close, including loan. This is moving fast. Average property in the Houston area will take about 4 months to close. That is about, 120 days. This is moving fast. This area is popular because the pricing, take a look at the houses, at what price they're selling. They're selling at a reasonable price that people can afford. This is workforce housing that I'm referring to. The other thing you look at is in that area, how many are active and how many are option pending and pending. Now remember, this I just pulled a couple of days back. COVID has done a number. There's a lot of buyers. Some of them have lost their jobs. Some of them have had their hours cut back, or they've had paycheck reduction. So everybody is now, not everyone, but a lot of people who are not confident of their jobs are stepping away from the market. This is not how it typically appears. You'll see a few active, maybe 1 or 2, and a whole bunch in the pending state. So the moment they're put under contract, they go into pending and option pending. What you want to look for is more of this right here is equal to the number of actives. That tells you that the market is moving. This combined with this tells you the market is moving, this last column. So right now, this is saying there's more actives and only 2 pending. So there's 4 and 2. So twice as many in an active state. But there's not a whole lot of actives too on the flip side. See, at this price point, you don't get too many properties that are inactive. So acquiring single family property, who to buy from? Wholesalers. I talked about that. Angel buyers houses, you may have seen those bandit signs. I paid top dollars. Those are all these are all wholesalers. Take their numbers and say, put me on your list. Some will, some won't. But the more lists you get on, you will start seeing more deals. Okay, and as you drive around in those neighborhoods, you're going to see this. It's just that you have not been paying attention. Trust me, they're there. Just look at electric poles. You just look at the entrance to neighborhoods, and you'll see them especially on Friday evening through Sunday night. Because if you put these bandit signs in a public area, the city of Houston or the county or whoever can find these people. So they kind of sneakily come in on Friday night, and by Sunday night, they've taken these signs down. So it's kind of sneaky, but hey, that's what it takes to get the job done, right? So with wholesalers, you have to be careful of their numbers, like I stated in an earlier slide. You need to be careful of their rehab and ARV, the pressure tactics. They're going to get you to try sign there with non-refundable deposits right there and then. So before you go, you need to have your homework all researched. Then other sources you can get from, well, Craigslist, Zillow, for sale by owner, this right here. You'll see those on Craigslist. There's a lot of people at a certain price point who do not like to sell through realtors and pay 6% fees, and they're trying to sell it themselves. You could get a good deal from them. Occasionally from MLS that I said, Real Acquisitions I talked about earlier, Propelio.com, it sends out leads. So Real Acquisitions will also give you, they give you all kinds of stuff. They'll give you all like stuff that is where people are behind on their monthly payment. I mean, just remember though, you're not the only person going after those deals, others are too. Try and develop relationship with realtors that will focus on investor houses. There are realtors in every market that deal with investors. Those are the ones you want to develop a relationship. You can buy what's called subject to. I'll talk about that in the next slide. So at or full price, if you want to buy, you can hunt on MLS or through a realtor, but there's added cost. So again, comments. Wholesalers are a great way to get these distressed properties. That's all they do. Watch out, they're going to require a non-refundable deposit. They don't care whether you don't like it later on or you can't get the loan. Too bad, so sad. You've lost at $3,000 or $5,000, whatever it is that you paid. So go there knowing that you're ready to do this. And you're going to be paying for all the closing fees, both the buyer side and the seller side. That's how they convince those sellers. And make sure your financing is set up. So you have talked to your lenders and the lenders are saying, you're good to go at this price. So you know, and so you have to go with that pre-qualification letter and proof of fund. These sellers are going to ask for that. Excuse me. I'm going to briefly talk about subject to. What are subject to? Subject to are properties that may not be at its top condition where the seller needs to offload the property fast for whatever reason. It's about to foreclose. They don't want a foreclosure on their record. They might have some little equity in the house. They want to try and get some of it out at least. Seller has an existing loan in place, okay? And you, the buyer, are then going to convince the seller, hey, you finance it to me, keep that original loan in place, and so you're now going to start making payments to the original loan company. So you're doing a sort of a wrap, and it is subject to the original loan in place. That's why it's called a subject to deal. Sub to is the term in short that's used in the industry. This is totally different from owner financing. You'll see these signs for sale by owner, and some of them will owner finance. That is different, folks, from sub to. Sub to is different, where you are now getting the property. It's being deeded over to you. It works under certain conditions. I'm not going to go through it in detail, but you got to be careful. When you're new, or even if you have done a few deals, be careful not to do this. You're going to run into this and you'll hear people bragging about how much money they're making. This is a little tricky to do. Just be careful, okay? But be aware of it, because as you get more experience, this is one way to buy a deal. And you can buy it with very little cash out of your pocket. So rehabbing. I'm going to go through all this fast now. So when you rehab, you got to know what is your exit. Are you trying to flip it? Are you trying to rent it? So accordingly, you're going to rehab to that level. If you're going to rent it, remember, you're not the one who's going to be renting. So you don't want to have granite countertops and I need to change the bathroom fixtures to do like this and like that. Folks, the renters are not, they cannot afford to pay more, even if you were to put gold faucets out there. So don't renovate this property to your personal taste. It has to be renovated to the level of the neighborhood, the level of the comps. Maybe not even comps. If it's rental, you're not selling it. So you can bring it down a notch. What's the big five? These are the biggest things that will suck up a lot of your money, okay? And they can cause a lot of issues, but that's the reason why they're distressed properties, because this is where the issues were. Try and hire an investor-friendly inspector. You know, these inspectors who go and inspect, they produce a big, thick report. You don't want that report. And they'll do it for a lower price, but they'll tell you verbally, hey, this is, you need to fix this, this needs to be fixed, this is out of code, and you'll need to bring it into code, et cetera, et cetera. It'll cost about $200, $250 max. It's worth it. Try and get reliable contractors. Substandard work is what will result from cheap ones and delays. Unless you know what you're doing and you know this particular contractor. In my case, I have one like that. And I have to keep him on a tight leash. I advocate fixing anything major in the beginning. I buy new appliances in the beginning, even though it may not be a must, because you're not going to get calls later. And if you do it in the beginning, you have capitalized it, which is, to use an accounting term, and you don't have to face that expense later. And make sure you can balance this with your job and family obligations, okay? Because you got to go when it is being rehabbed. You have to go like at least 3 times a week. Otherwise, these rehabbers, they go way off on a tangent. And before you know it, things have gotten screwed. So that's the way you have to stay on top. So your focus is on timely. They have to move fast. They have to do a decent job at a good price. So these are some examples of issues you'll run into in rehabbing. Foundation issues. When you go into a house and you see that crack above the door, that is because the foundation is going like this. It's settling on one side. And you'll see this crack. Sometimes you'll see the crack, sometimes you'll see inside, sometimes you'll see on both the times. Trees next to an house is a dead giveaway that there's going to be foundation issues. I have no idea why people plant trees close to their house, but they do it, and they end up screwing up their house with huge expenses down the road. Water ponding. This is water ponding. Water is collecting. You notice this area is dry and there's water. You're going to have issues with this house down the line. This is going to crack and it's going to result in foundation issues. Roof issues. So this roof over here, if you see it's like shiny, that roof is way past its repair date. It should have been replaced a long time back. And you notice that in this, look at this is the fascia. All that wood has rotted. So when you buy a house like this, you're going to have to replace this entire fascia board right here. And that costs money. It's not very expensive, but it adds up. Every little thing starts to add up. These are all expensive examples of roof that are messed up. This is messed up due to just over a period of time, the tiles, the shingles have started to warp. This is just old, worn out. This one right here, if you notice that it's sagging. What is that telling you? It's telling you that you'll not only have to replace this, even though the shingles look good, but the, well, all of a sudden I'm drawing a blank, but the not a flooring, but the underneath layer, which is plywood, has started to sag, and you're going to have to replace that because that's about to break and cause a lot more damage. What is the issue over here? There's not enough of slope. So you can have roofs that are like this, like this, like this. So this eventually is going to create trouble. Okay, this kind of a roof. This is decking. I was just reminded of the word. This underneath this shingles is the decking. That's what it's called. That decking has gotten messed up. HVAC issue stands for high voltage AC. So these are issues you'll run into outside. If you notice, it's become all white. That indicates that Freon is leaking. Cold free, or whatever, the refrigerant is leaking, and the moisture around it has become ice. That is something that's going to have to get fixed. Here on the exterior, your lawnmower guy has kept bumping against this compressor, and it has gotten messed up. It will need to be replaced. This is an example. This is in the attic, by the way. So you have 3 units in the AC. You've got the external unit, which is the compressor. They call it by a different name. I call it compressor. I'm from an engineering background because that's what it is. It's called a compressor. But it's called by a different name. And then you've got 2 units in the attic. One is the furnace, and the other one, which is, and then you have what's called the evaporator coil. The furnace is what blows, which is why you feel air coming out of the vents. It is also the one that will create where the gas will be ignited. And so here it's showing that it has gotten rusted. That means it's time to replace. Here the drain pan has gotten rusted. That means there's been leaks, or it's just over a period of time started to rust. When this starts to rust, and over here, these are the evaporator coils, water starts to drip. And when it drips, it's supposed to go to the outside of the house, or it's supposed to feed into your plumbing. Here, what's going to happen is when this rust has given away, this drain pan over here has given away and a hole starts to develop, that water will steadily start drip down over here, and you'll start seeing water coming out from your ceiling. It's just a matter of time. Electrical issues, I showed you that issue with that aluminum wiring and the sparking. Federal Pacific, that's on your exterior where the service comes from CenterPoint, and it joins over here. This is the riser. It's called a riser that attaches to the roof. If you're living in a more modern house, it's all underground. But when you're buying these workforce housing, these are older houses, and that's how the service is coming. And this is the service box right here. When you see Federal Pacific, you got to change it. It's going to cost money. This stuff is going to cost you $1,300 to change. If many times this service, this electricity, high voltage, comes and joins over here, that's how it used to be. But that's not according to code anymore. The code says it's not even, it has to be at least 10 feet. So now you have to put in a riser, and that's going to cost another $400 to $500, or maybe even $600. So working with contractors, reliability, forget it. You cannot afford to delegate. I'm not going to run through this, but if you have questions, give me a call because I'm running out of time. Get a W-9 signed because you got to report to the IRS folks. You got to get a signed release letter from them acknowledging that you have paid them in full, because otherwise they can file a lien on your house. It's called a mechanic's lien. So when you have that letter, something they have signed that they have paid in full and no dues are owed, no one can do anything. No one can do any mess up for you. Well-run rehabbers will do work at the rate of $6,000 per week. So if you've got a $24,000 rehab, it'll be done in 6 weeks. But that's from the time they start. But you have to allow another 2 weeks at least. Poor rehabbers will take a lot longer. They'll charge you a lot less, but boy, your work can drag on for a while. And in this business, the longer it drags, the more you're paying for stuff and not getting anything in return. And that's not a good thing. So these are some of the costs that I've just thrown out there for what the HVAC new AC unit will cost, roof. You can look at it at your leisure. There's a lot more than that, but so renting. You got to familiarize yourself with the state statutes. Over here in the state of Texas, it's section, I can't read it over here, it's section 92, I believe. Don't be on the wrong side of the law. That's no excuse. So you got to know that if you're renting, you has to have a deadbolt on the inside that cannot be opened from the outside. You got to have a peephole. People have the ability to see what's outside or both from their front door and the back door without having to open the door. That's part of the law. When you're getting renters, if they don't have the right background check, you can charge more in deposit, because some people who don't have correct documentation will not be able to show you rental history because they don't have a social security number. And by law, they are allowed to rent. There's no issues. But then if you have other people who cannot produce rental history, you need to charge more, folks, because they are more risky. For all you know, they may have been kicked out of somewhere. And those people can give you a lot of grief. How you select your renter will determine the lack of headaches later. This is where I invest my effort in trying to find a good renter. You find a good renter, and that's why you got to go there personally every time somebody comes. And that's why I said 30 to 40 minutes, no more, that you have to be in driving distance. There's a seasonality that you need to be aware of. The peak season is May through August. That's when people are changing houses. So they want to make sure the school is lined up for their kids. And once that August is over, literally September, it starts to fall. November is completely, it's like no one wants to move during Thanksgiving, Christmas, and then you got January, it's cold. So those are the worst months. And if you have caught with your rehab done in October, you're going to have a hard time renting that house up until February shows up. So you can get your leases from TREC, which is applicable for the state of Texas. In your own state, if you're from out of Texas, your property is out of Texas, then you have to consult your local real estate commission. But I prefer my own contracts because I can have some more stricter language that I tend to put in. Insurance, you got to have these kind of insurance. I'm not going to talk about it in detail. It's a different kind of insurance than what you're used to when you own your house. These are builder's risk, vacant property, and all that stuff. Please carry flood insurance. It's cheap. For investors, if it's not your own house, it's about $600. $600 a year versus $40,000 in damage. Boy, this is the cheapest insurance you can buy. And you know why you can do it? Because of tax breaks to the real estate industry, folks. It makes no sense for the government to be charging $600 to us investors when it costs a hell of a lot more to fix a house when it's flooded. But because of the strong lobby, and it is subsidized by the W-2 and the 1099 taxpayer. There you go again, I get to say it again. Make sure you have $1 million umbrella insurance over and above, okay? The brokers that deal with rental properties are different than the ones that deal with your normal properties. Make sure you've got the right kind of insurance brokers. Finally, tips. Well, some will say, fix everything up front. So for the next 5 years, you don't get calls, and just about like 5 years, appliances start to break, this starts to happen and that starts to happen. So before 5 years, get rid of the property, buy another one. So that's one school of thought. Some other people will say, you know what, I can just deal with it. It's up to you. Different strokes for different people. I change out my appliances. I change out the toilets in the beginning. I get the plumber to clean everything out, so there should be no complaints whatsoever. And then in my lease, I will put that they'll have to pay me $50 or $100 service fee whenever they call me for something, unless it's not a fault of my own house, like the roof is leaking and stuff like that. If it's something else, the most common excuse is the toilet is not flushing. Well, when I gave it to you, the toilet was flushing just right, folks. If you want me to come, I'll send a plumber, but there's $100 fee. What would you like to do? Miraculously, the toilet starts to work. I've had those calls. I've had calls where the kitchen sink is not draining. Well, it's not draining because they're dumping grease. And my lease states that you're not supposed to do that, but you did it. And I know why it's not draining. Would you like me to come? Or would you like me to send a plumber? It'll cost $100. All of a sudden, there's quiet. The sink starts to work just fine. All they got to do is get something from Home Depot and drain out their own stuff that they have been negligent about. Okay, so you're dealing with folks. Remember, if they were very responsible folks, I shouldn't say that, there are some hardworking folks, but there are folks who are irresponsible with their money and they end up where they are, and then you start getting calls for all kinds of nonsense. But install quick sets. These are keys, these are locks where you don't have to change out the entire lock, call a locksmith and all that stuff, which is expensive. So all you got to do is put that little pin there and change it, and boom, you got a new key, which is what you got to do every time you change out a renter. You have to do it by law, because the last thing you want is somebody else to have the keys and be able to enter the house. And next thing you know, you got a lawsuit, and deservedly so. I tend to put a cage around the HVAC because there's copper thieves that break through just for the copper. Higher deposit, blah, blah, blah. So enforce your lease. Folks, every time I go there, I'll make an excuse. One of the things is you can go there to change out the air filter. I want to come there and change your air filter. You got to give 24 hours notice as per the Texas real estate, the code, the law. And then I get to see how they're living. You want to know whether they're a pet that they had said before there was no pet, suddenly a pet has cropped up and there's a smell. Well, they're supposed to pay additional deposit and supposed to give you a non-refundable amount of money. That's according to my lease. So go there and just see who's living. Are there more cars that have miraculously turned up? I'll give you an example. This happened, okay, of a guy who rented out his house, and this was on the east side of town. And he rented it out, and the renter paid him 12 months in advance. 12 months in advance, he paid him the rent. And he paid the deposit too, all cash. So the landlord was like, all right, like 12 months in advance, all right, what could go wrong, right? And he's done, and he's given like triple deposit because he doesn't have the history and blah, blah, blah. So instead of whatever that rent was, I forget now, 1,500, he's got 4,500 in rent, plus he's got like 1 month advance in rental income. And then roughly about 8 to 9 months into the year, he starts to get a call from the cops that there is a peculiar smell at your property. You need to go check it out. The neighbors are complaining. And he goes to his house. Literally, he can't even get inside his house. You know what's inside his house? A whole bunch of old tires. He tries to go along the side into the backyard. His backyard is covered with tires. The house and the yard ended up getting used as a tire dump. You can't imagine the headaches. Potentially, that has become now a toxic site. I'm not going to go into what the heck he did. I have no idea, but This is a nightmare that you do not want to encounter. Therefore, you got to make sure you choose the right renter. Be suspicious of those who are paying cash too much, uh, who don't have rental history, and you got to go and drive by your property. Just make sure everything's fine. So takeaways, I'm going to go through it real quick before we get into the Q&A. Consider getting a realtor license because you need to be able to do comps. You need to be able to list your property. At all points, you'll find cost, and the ability to get good information is extremely important. Join RIAs, they're called, Real Estate Investment Associations. These three things right now is hard because of COVID, everything is shut down. But boy, I mean, like I said in my part one, you can be going to one every day of the week, Monday through Thursday, and not even eat in your house. And also drink every single day. There's so many of these networking deals. They're by hard money people, they're by rehabbing people, they're by people who are wanting to pitch it to wholesalers to join their team, all kinds of stuff. Assume 4 to 6 months of research and learning. Don't be hasty. Become familiar with texas.gov, the main forms that you're going to use to buy, and other associated forms. And as I said before, you know, you don't want to go for a home run right in the beginning or even in the first 2 houses. Please don't. You'll end up with a headache like the one I had. That turned out to be a money pit, by the way, even though it looks all nice. Buy discounted properties. And so you got to minimize your cash out of pocket. And you got to use hard money. Improve the value of the house and then cash out. That is what's going to reduce the cash out of pocket. And whatever your money is, I don't know how much money each of you have, you will be able to buy more houses that way. Have a mentor. Final thought, there's good deals coming right now. Unfortunately, when there's an economic downturn, more people start to experience economic distress. That's just an unfortunate reality, and these wholesalers are now all over trying to get these deals. It's not yet started, but you're beginning to see that. I'm seeing buyers step away from buying, the normal buyers. Even investors, they're not sure whether they can rent. But if you get a property at a good price, I will buy it. So there's going to be more, the deal flow is going to get good in the few months coming up. That's my point. So with that, I think we're done. Q&A. So I'm going to go to all the questions that have been, and this is my email ID. Someone asked me, I just want to let you know the expectation of score. By the way, you can choose whatever mentor you want. You don't like a mentor, you can change mentors. You can get multiple mentors. You can come as many times you want to at SCORE. It's free. Okay. And the one thing I cannot do is partner with you or have any fiduciary conflict of interest with you folks. I'm not allowed to do that. But I can tell you over the phone, and occasionally I might even come in person, but it all depends on where the property is. I'm not going to drive halfway across town. Sorry, I don't even get paid for this. This is my give back to the community. So thank you very much for the class. It is greatly appreciated. Where on the SBA site can we find part 1? I happen to piss. Okay, Manuel, just email me, please. I'll send you the slides for part 1, okay? Tracy is saying, when you refi, it usually requires you to pay for the title, etc., all over again. Is there a way to get around this? No, there isn't, but you get a discount. You get a substantial discount if you go to the same title company, and they'll charge you only like you got to shop around. Typically about 60% or so you'll have to pay. And it depends on how much time has elapsed. So if you do it within 3 months or 4 months or 5 months, which is typically what we're trying to do here, you'll pay only like 50%. If you do it after 1 year, then you got to pay more, etc. But here's the thing. People will look at closing costs. They look at, okay, this title company is charging $300 for legal fees, and this one is charging 400. That's all fine. I urge you to shop around. You should. But do not get lost in that forest. You're there to understand the forest, not to focus on the trees. Understand whether your cash out of pocket is $18,000 or $20,000. In the end, is not going to make a whole lot of difference. You paid $2,000 more in closing, which is highly unlikely. Your ability to do deals faster and ability to do more deals and thereby increase your net worth is much more powerful, folks. It is highly informative, beneficial. Thank you very much. You're welcome. Anonymous, why property management company requests to be added to insurance policy? So this question is, there's a third-party property management company, and they're requesting to be added to your insurance policy as the additional insured. You can add them, but the first in line is going to be you. The reason why that property management company might be asking to be added in is for liability reasons, because they're the ones who are going to send out a contractor and so on and so forth to fix things. And if something happens, God forbid, their contractor ends up, I don't know, God forbid, raping one of the ladies in the house or something like that, it's really on the property management company. They're going to get sued. But so they're just trying to protect themselves. But that was a bad example, but more like, if there's a problem in the property, they don't want to get sued. Ryan, do you have any good book recommendations for further study? Running a real estate, boy, there's a whole bunch of books. There's no end to that. There's a whole lot of people on Facebook and on websites who are wanting you to take their free books so that they can charge you $5 grand, 10 grand for further mentoring. Ryan, there's no end to it. There's no end to it. There's a whole lot of it out there. Just look for wholesaling or property rehab done right or something like that. Just Google and you'll find out. How to buy properties, distressed properties. That's another good title that you can look for if you're wanting to buy properties. What is ARV? Well, looks like this is anonymous. ARV is after repaired value, which is your market value of the property after it's been fixed. That's what we covered in part 1. But ARV is what everyone refers to in this business, folks. Chiara, thank you for this helpful presentation. You're welcome. You lost me on slide 31. Where does the 20K for repair come from? Okay, I don't know what slide 31 is, but if your question is where did 20K for repair come from, I just pulled it out of the sky. Don't stress over that. It's just an example with made up numbers. You have to take out 2 loans is the question, a hard loan and a long-term loan. Yes, if you're you could pay that entire money up front with cash if you have that. But I wouldn't recommend that, because even if you had cash, let's say you got $200,000, you don't want to tie it up in one property, because from beginning to end to the time you cash out, it's going to take you at least 5 months. I can tell you that, if that property needs repair. And during that time, you have now locked yourself out of buying 2 more properties or 1 more property. In the beginning, you want to go with just 1, that's fine. But later on, you might get good deals and if you put too much cash into the deal, that prevents you from buying another property. That's when you're trying to skip out on hard money. But to answer your question, there's a hard loan and a long-term loan, yes. Aziz is asking, what is the relationship of tax appraised value to market value or comps? They're supposed to reflect market value as of January 1st, but with Harris County, they're gone nuts. There's no relationship in my view. They're just pulling out with like a 1 mile radius. They'll pull up and just, they're pulling numbers out of their ears. Harris County is so bad. They've become notorious. They're the reason why the state of Texas passed a law to limit these property tax increases. And of course, Travis County mourned the biggest and the loudest. But in short answer, there's supposed to be a relationship, but that relationship breaks down. It's supposed, tax appraised value is supposed to reflect the comps. And that's why when you go to protest your tax, you got to go with all the things that are wrong with your property and to convince them that is not the value of your property. Can you please talk about investor contractors? This is from Anonymous. Investor contractors are different in the sense that if you go to a regular contractor, there's three kinds of contractors. One is your local Jose, and I'm saying Jose because in Houston, they're all Latinos across the board. Someone that you happen to know, that's one kind. That's the cheap kind. But those people have to be managed well. And I have one of those, but he's very sporadic and really, he also mows lawns, okay? And then you've got the high end who will come and do a professional remodeling of your house, right? If it's your property, your own house that you stay in. You want to do it nice. Those are not the guys you want to hire, folks. You're not, again, trying to stay in that house. So you do not want those high-end people. They're going to be costing more. Their labor that they use is good. Somewhere between this Jose and these high-end remodelers is those that focus on investors. And their whole mantra is do it quick, 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 as cheaply as possible, as reasonably as possible, and get out. Their work is not going to be perfect, but you end up paying less. So those are investor contractors. You will run into them the more you network. Can you show slide 32 again? Also, we're going to send you the whole presentation. Also, the $112,000 loan amount in slide 32, is that the refinance loan and second long-term loan? Yes, it is. The $112,000 is what it appraised for afterwards, after you fixed it, where the ARV became $150,000. So at 75% of ARV, which is what the bank will do, you will get $112,000 loan. Aziz, what criteria do the appraisers use to determine the market value? They use, whenever they do the appraisal, they send you on their website, they'll have that whole, it's like goes into 50, 60 pages of all the properties that they've pulled. And their whole thing is they're trying to do based on like properties, you know, same number of bedrooms, same number of bathrooms, square footage, acreage, all that stuff. But they don't take into account what is the interior state of your property. Latina says, we can't see your phone. No, I didn't list my phone number, Latina, but I've listed my email ID. Just contact me that way, please. Elena Skoll, can't see. I'm not sure what you're referring to. Taylor, can't see because of your, virtual background. Yeah, my virtual background, it's just so that you don't see my ugly house. So that's why my hair, you know, it kind of like Terminator keeps on evaporating and changing. This assumes that the buyer, that's another question. This assumes that the buyer has income to offset the interest charges on tax return, correct? I'm not sure what that question is, but I'm assuming this has to do with the tax write-off. Interest is something that can be written off, and you have income because your income through rental income, remember? You're getting income. So that income theoretically is all taxable, but you get to use these offsets, the depreciation and the interest that you're paying on the loan. And at the end of it all, there's hardly anything that is taxable. I hope I answered your question. Chiara, does net cash still in the deal after second loan mean that's the amount of cash in your pocket? No, that's the amount that went out of your pocket. That's the amount that is in that deal. So that money is gone from your pocket. So if you have 25,000 and you put 20,000, that is the net cash still in the deal, you're left with 5,000. On screen 37, what is less PI means? PI stands for principal and interest. When you take a loan, you have to pay monthly payments. That's what it stands for, principal and interest. You got to get used to this term, PITI. So less principal, interest, taxes, insurance. Those are your fixed costs that every property with a loan will have. What is the relevance of HCAD annual value and the estimate of your ARV of the property? Is it purely based on MLS listing? The ARV is based off of MLS listing. The HCAD is supposed to reflect that, but which is the Harris County Appraisal District that he's referring to. But they try and jack it up, okay? Their business is trying to increase the appraised value as much as possible, thereby they get more taxes. Where do you get hard money loans? From Chiara. Oh boy, there's quite a few in town. You can call me, email me, I can tell you there's a bunch. And they're all over town. And they have these get-togethers. So right now things have shut down, but they are the ones who have these get-togethers at a certain day of every month, and where the booze flows freely, and they also have odors. When do you recommend hiring a property management company? Boy, I personally don't put out my property on property management. I like to manage it myself because I'm the one who's going to manage it the best. If you're from out of town, which happens with a lot of people from California, etc., buy properties in Texas because Texas is such a good, strong rental market, they will hire a property management company. So if you're going to be moving out of town, then you got to hire a property management company to look after your property. How do I develop a list of investor-friendly tradesmen? Networking. Go to RIA, your Real Estate Investment Association. There's one called Rich Club, RICH, that stands for Realty Investment Club of Houston. Austin has one, San Antonio has one, every town has one. And there's just not one, there's competing ones. Just go and attend, get a membership in them, but be aware of angles, okay? So you'll run into all where they will talk about an electrician and all kinds of tradespeople. How can we get copies of part 1? Just email me, Tracy. I'll send it. Can you please talk about investor contractors? I already did. Thank you very much. You're welcome, Crisaria. How do you access available hard lenders? That's what I just said. They're all over town. You can just look up on Google, by the way. You can Google hard money lending, hard money lenders. They'll come up. And if you need something to run by me, just email me. Hi, I would like to know how to switch to long-term loan after having used my money for the initial buy. Thank you for sharing. This is from Laura. How to switch to long-term loan? You just contact the the long-term loan people, and they'll get rolling. They want your business. I'm not sure if there was anything more in that question. It's all, there's a bunch of long-term lenders. You know, even JP Morgan, Chase, all these other regular ones will also do it, but their terms tend to be a little nasty. So go with these investor-friendly long-term lenders. Meet and work with mentor at RIA. Reimbursement needed. I'm not sure what the question is. This is from Anonymous. Meet and work with mentor at RIA. Mentor is something you got to find. Most of those mentors that you'll run into are doing it for a fee. Again, just try and find, just like you stumbled into this webinar and I educated you on a lot of things, which you'll find most people are not doing that. They're doing it for a fee. At SCORE, we're doing it for free. It's just like that. You just have to keep at it. You might just run into a mentor who will do it for free. At SCORE, we'll do it, but it's me, and it's going to be as time permits. Thank you for the info. Where would you suggest we find responsible contractors to complete rehab jobs? Okay, the term responsible contractors is an oxymoron, Noel. You'll find contractors. I'm just partly kidding. You have to stay on top. Look, they're giving you investor pricing. It says that, remember that saying, you get what you pay for. If you go with some inexpensive people, you got to be on their backs. You got to be there all the time, seeing what the hell they're doing. And you make your contract with them as detailed as possible and list out every single thing that needs to be done. And you can ask them for what, where are they going to buy their stuff? Home Depot, or you can go there to Home Depot and buy that stuff for them. In the morning, you'll go to Home Depot. Oh, by the way, for find contractors, you can go to Home Depot early in the morning, 6 to 9. Those are all the good contractors coming in to load up on supplies. Just FYI, I just realized that. Show up there the earlier you show up, Home Depot opens up at, I think, 5 or 5:30. You go up there at 5:30 or 6 maximum. Those people are coming with a list of things to get. Those are organized contractors, folks. I just shared with you something invaluable. Those are the ones who are going to be probably the more responsible contractors. Hi, how can we receive this on demand? Anthony, I'm not sure what you're referring to. If there's something you need, send it by email, please. Thank you for your time and service. You're welcome, Ruby. Thank you so much. Louisa, thank you. Yes, you're welcome. When is the next class? Have a few people who could not attend. Stella, whenever we do this, it won't be for a while. It'll be at least a couple of months, I'm guessing. But if you're on the SCORE email list, just watch out for our classes. That's all I can say. I was recently in California, and a lot in an exclusive neighborhood was 100,000. My construction costs are estimated at 150K. The comps are 2 million. Is it realistic to receive the comp price? I can tell you something is way off. If you buying land at 100,000 and your construction is at only 150K, I don't think so. $2 million houses, your construction cost at a minimum will be about at least 140 to 150 bucks a foot. So if you're constructing a 2,000 square foot house, it's going to cost you a minimum 300 to 400,000 plus the value of the lot. So I think there's something off over there. Hello, do you have a particular website that you use to find ARV? Angel, that's coming from the comps, which is in MLS. MLS is what all realtors use. That's where all properties that got sold are listed. That is the most authoritative sources. Now, there are third-party software that I mentioned, like Propelio and Real Acquisitions and so on and so forth, that will charge you a monthly fee to get to the same information. Our down payment, closing, appraisal, the same things to consider when looking for a property. Appraisal, very important, yes. Down payment, I think that's the deposit you're talking about. That's important, but the most important thing, as I said in my earlier slide, I had the red arrows. ARV is the most important. What is your rehab estimate? And what are the rental values for that neighborhood? These are three most important things you gotta know in advance. If you get those wrong, your numbers are not going to come out the way you wanted. Can I get part 2 so I can listen to again? Well, you know, it's a problem for us. We are a nonprofit, Ruby, to send you the recording. I'm not sure how long that recording will stay, but we'll try and get it for you. We don't have a, you know, well-organized office, but they're doing the best they can. We'll try and get it out to you. Can both parts of your presentation be found on the SCORE website? No, we're only emailing those that attended, so just email me, please. Or the second one, our office will be emailing in the next, just allow, this is today is Saturday, so Sunday, everything is closed. Monday, allow until Wednesday or Thursday at least to get these slides, okay? It'll come from the office. I don't have all of you and your email IDs. Thank you for your time. Let us know how to find part 1, missed part 1. Just email me, please, Yolanda. I'll send you part 1. Thank you for time. You're welcome, Stella. And Angel, if you're low on cash, what other options do you have to get a down payment? If you're low on cash, assume this is to acquire. Email me, Angel. So I've not fully understood the question. Henry Dominguez, what banks are easier to work with? Again, when you network, you'll find out they're not really traditional banks. These are lenders. They are licensed lenders that are more focused on investor properties. So it's through networking, and email me. I can share with you a couple, okay? Are mortgage interest rates determined by the economy? Yes, it is. That's a whole different discussion. They're mainly determined by the bonds, but I'll skip because that's not the main thrust of this webinar. A spreadsheet to record accounting for rental properties and what can be deducted. Well, QuickBooks. There's QuickBooks, and there's a bunch of others too that are competing with QuickBooks. When you're doing a rental property, just about any accounting software is going to work. When you start doing other stuff, like commercial properties, then you got to use something else. But for the vast majority rental properties, your QuickBooks will work just fine. Ryan, thanks, Nick. You're welcome, Ryan. Veronica, thank you for the wonderful. Do you find that banks or credit unions are faster, easier, more cost? Yeah, your own credit union is going to be cheaper for sure. Are they going to be easy to work with? Not as much as these investor-focused lending companies. But you know, you pay what you get for. Your credit union will be cheaper, but they'll be a little bit harder to work with in terms of investor properties. The ARV may not come out to be where you want it to be, etc. But their cost will be lower. Great job. Thanks, Elena. Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you. Are you going to send the slides? Yes. Nick, you mentioned to be pre-approved on the loan before making the offer. Hard money lenders will provide yeah, hard money lenders will provide, better yet, you get a pre-approved So the question is pre-approval from hard money. Remember, you're getting hard money, and after that, you're getting long-term. The more harder qualification is with long-term. If the long-term people have qualified you, hard money is a snap. So make sure you get pre-qualified with long-term people first. Hard money, and then hard money people are a snap. Who gives hard money? Okay, we discussed all that. These are just specialized companies. Do you know if there are any homes in Houston that have basements? Oh boy, I've not run into them at all, Tracy. But you know, I mean, the thing is, they have raised now houses by Braes Bayou in the Maryland area. And so now they have created these artificial basements because they raised the property by a good 10 to 12 feet because of repeated flooding. If you purchase a house to flip and there are outstanding taxes, who is responsible for paying those outstanding taxes? That's why you go through a title company, even though it costs money, and they'll make sure these taxes, any outstanding taxes and liens are taken care of. So it takes place at that time, and it depends on between you, the buyer, and the seller. That can be one of the tools you can use with a seller to negotiate a lower price. Are subject to properties equivalent to pre-foreclosed properties? Nope. Do I conduct presentations on pre-foreclosure properties or foreclosed homes? No, I don't. There are people who will do it, but they're going to tell you enough to whet your appetite. But the whole, remember, angle is, so you pay 10 grand, 15 grand, 20,000 to join their program, and then they'll mentor you and blah, blah, blah. I wouldn't do that in the beginning, okay? Unless you got a lot of money to burn. But the thing is, even if you do that, you still have to, like I said, crawl before you walk. You won't know how to do the rehab, what it's going to cost, what are the issues involved. Look, all these are sophisticated buying techniques. You do that afterwards. You don't do it in the beginning. You'll get burnt pretty bad. Tracy, why do you have to have reserves? You're buying property for rentals. It's a good question. What if your renter just leaves the house, vanishes? What if this economy crashes like it did? And some of the renters can't pay, they have lost their jobs. So even if they can't pay their rent, you are still on the hook for taxes, property insurance, and paying the monthly mortgage to your lender. So that's why you have to have reserves. Although right now, even the property lenders are giving you forbearance terms. They're allowing you to defer payments just because of the magnitude of what has happened. Chima, thank you so much. You're welcome, Chima. Tracy, how many properties do you currently have, and are any of them mixed use? Mixed use. I'm not sure what you mean by mixed use. You either have single family or you have commercial. In commercial, they use mixed commercial, which has residential and retail. That's what you're referring to, but that's completely different animal. How many properties? I'm in multifamily mainly, as I said in my first slides. I'm in about, they go by doors. So I'm in about 5,500 units. So I'm in a bunch of properties, in short. Louisa, I just divorced. We're selling a house and I want to invest my part. Louisa, email me separately, please. I just want to make sure I give you the right advice, okay? Yours is a bit of a complicated question, so I hope you understand. Courtney, thank you for your time. Yeah, you're welcome, Courtney. Thank you. Alex, thank you. Yes. How can we obtain this audio and replay it? Anthony, that's going to be on the, if we can share with you the link for the actual webinar, that'll have it. Like I said, it'll be for a limited time because we are nonprofit, we don't pay. And so hopefully we'll get it out to you guys, the webinar as well, the recording. Can we receive this webinar on demand? No, you can't. Again, we're nonprofits, we're not structured. This whole session today was free. Get what you pay for. Sorry, I didn't mean it in a negative manner, but we're just short staff. I don't make any money, nobody does. So we're all volunteers. Do you recommend buying and flipping land? Well, you got to know what you're doing, Tracy, because dirt does not go up fast. I mean, dirt really crawls. And right now is a bad time to be trying to time it. Bad time. Stanley, yeah, thank you. You're welcome, Stanley. Do you have a real estate license? Do you have? I don't have a real estate license, so why would I need it? If I was to be a realtor, Veronica, then I would need a real estate license. Otherwise, you don't. If not, do you use a realtor to sell your completed rehabs? Well, I quit doing rehabs. I did that some time back because I wanted to learn to acquire these rentals. My goal was always rentals. So yeah, you have to use a realtor to sell, ideally. And that's why I'm recommending to all of you to get a realtor's license. It helps. You just get access to all that data. That's important. Moselle, thank you. You're welcome. Tennille, when working with a hard lender, is it the same process as a traditional loan? Yeah, more or less it is, but their criteria is better than a long term. That's about the only difference. And they charge more. Is Zillow a good platform to look for distressed properties? Zillow lists everything that's on MLS, by the way, that tied. But now if it is a owner that is wanting to sell without a realtor, yeah, they will list it on Zillow. Boy, it's like searching for a needle in a haystack. So the possibility exists, yes. Tracy, mixed use commercial and single family together. I don't use any mixed use commercial, Tracy. It's just multifamily and single family. That's all I have. And even single families, I have very few because I moved into multifamily. But I intend to crank up in single family again, just because there's likely to be some good deals coming up. Tracy, okay, you're welcome. Thanks, Louisa. Thank you. Okay, Cantrell, thank you so much. Tracy, thank you. Charles, what do you mean by bank balance on hard money loan? Charles, so I had referred to hard money loans where one of the things they look for is your bank balance. They'll be looking for your bank statements to make sure you have adequate cash, because you got to be able to pay them those interest during the period of that loan. And remember, their interest is high. So they just want to know, do you have enough cash in your bank account? That's what they're looking for. So that's what I mean by bank balance. How do you get on the list of the wholesalers? Boy, Charles, once you get on them, it's hard to come out of it. It's like whack-a-mole. Just contact them. Like I said, all those bandit signs, Google wholesalers, they're out there. Just get in touch with them and say, put me on your list. Anonymous says, if it costs you $6,000 a week for your contractors and you only have taking $20,000 out for the rehab, how are they paid? No, wait. The total rehab is $20,000 in my example, and I just said that the good contractors, the investor, good contractors, they go at that speed. So that gives you an idea of how much time your rehab will get finished in, the time period it will take. That's all it's saying. Paula, their total is $6,000 a week for 5 weeks is $30,000. Yeah, I mean, look, it's like, what is your rehab? divided by 6. That's the number of weeks the rehab will go on for. But it's going to take longer because it'll take some time for your act to get together. They might have to pull some permits depending on the situation. It'll take some few days for you to sign the contract with them, and then allow for, something that didn't go right per your expectation, or you decided to add something or subtract something. So you add a couple of weeks, pad it, please. So I hope I answered your question, Paula, and that ends it all. Thank you so very much, folks. Good luck to all of you. Thanks for attending. Bye-bye.